All right, now when it comes to grass, it's quite a big topic because there's many different ways you can do grass, and not really one right or wrong way to do it. In fact, you don't really have to do it at all if you don't want to. In a case like this, where we have very low grass, you could probably get away with just having a texture, like an image map or just a noise applied to it or a small bump map to give you that effect. Um, so it's not absolutely necessary for you to do grass, but I want to take a moment and talk about it, and I want to have grass in my scene. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna show you how to go about creating grass. Now, there's many different types of grass, as you can see here. We have this very low, what I'm going to call a fill grass. So it's just kind of filling the space a little bit. That's what we're going to be creating right now. And then we have these longer blades of grass, different types of grass, bushes, and things like that scattered throughout. And I think that's the key to having a really nice, realistic scene. Like if you go out and look in your yard, look in your lawn at the grass, there's not just, unless you have an immaculate lawn, you may have that. Most people aren't only going to have one type of grass or one type of plant in their lawn. They're going to have weeds and a bunch of other things growing out there. And it's the variety that's going to make this look a little bit more realistic, not necessarily just having grass or not having grass. So you can get away without having it. Having other sort of bushes and plants and things like that, and still kind of getting that grass look. Now, I really want to have grass, and I really want to take the opportunity to show you guys how my approach to creating simple grass. So we have like very low sort of like golf turf grass like this, and then we have something that's a little bit more wild and like these long wispy pieces of grass or flowers and things like that. So I think I'm going to aim kind of something in between here. So I want to have something that's grassy, and eventually we'll have some variety, but I don't want it to be too much of a resource hog. I don't want it to increase my render times too much. So I'm going to try to do this in a very clean way, or a way that doesn't hog up a lot of my resources. So because this can get to be something that just will shoot you above like just millions and millions of polygons. It's going to make it harder to handle your scene. It's going to lag. It's going to take longer to render. So I just want you to be very careful with this. Maybe experiment in a separate scene first to see if you can get it to work and work on your computer in a way where it renders quickly and so on. But you can get away without doing grass, and you can still have a fabulous looking scene without grass. But I want to show you my approach to doing some very simple grass that's not too much of a resource hog. So what we're going to start with here is just a basic plane. So I have a grass blade that I've already modeled here. And if I just hit F, you'll see that it's pretty simple, right? The simpler we keep this, the quicker it's going to respond, the less laggy it's going to get, because we're going to be creating thousands and thousands of polygons just by tweaking a little slider really quick. So you don't want to get too crazy with this. Now for the taller grass and the bushes and stuff, yeah, I'm going to get a little bit more detailed with that, but those are not nearly as abundant as like this fill grass. So I need something really simple for the fill grass. So we're just going to start with this little grass blade here. And I should have the same material on this as my ground. Just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and assign that ground material to that. And then we'll make a mesh object out of it. So with that selected, we'll go to mesh, go to distribute, change our distribution type to mesh, and go ahead and throw our ground in the input mesh there. And then we can start to really increase the amount we have here. Now, you'll see that 100 isn't nearly enough, right? And it's pretty tiny. We'll probably want to increase the size a little bit. We're probably going to need to go upwards of like 50,000, 20,000, 50,000, something like that. Let's start with just like, see, 10,000 still isn't really that much. Let's try 50,000, a little bit better. And this will get a little bit better as we fill it out with scale a little bit. I want to check use face area so it spreads a little bit more evenly. And I also want to go to my mesh and create a random node. And we'll do absolute. Actually, we'll leave uniform scale off for now, but I want to lower the positions. I want to set my translation space to local, and then increase my Y rotation all the way around. We can mess with the X and Z rotation a little bit, and then we can start increasing our scale quite a bit. Now we probably want to increase this a lot, just because the grass we have is kind of not really big enough. Right. And I think I want to bring the Y up a lot more than the other two. And if it's poking through anything, we'll deal with that a bit later. But for now, I think this is pretty good. And let's just do a little render. I'm going to do a close-up render just to see how this looks from this angle. It will also help to have the same material as your ground for it to blend in. If you have two different materials and they're too far apart color-wise, it's not going to look right. It's going to look like it's going to look fuzzy rather than grassy. So yeah, it's not really looking too great at this point. So it definitely has the grassy look, but it's still way too sparse. So we're going to need a lot more grass here. And I'm also going to want to increase. I don't think my Z scale is really doing anything because it's just a plane, but I do want to increase my Y scale quite a bit, and probably you can also take these above 10, so we can go to 15 for the height. I don't think I want to go quite that high. Yeah, I think 10 and 10 might be good, but we definitely need more of it. So we're going to go to distribute. We're at 50,000 now. We could try 100,000. So we could try doubling it. But again, use this with caution. This will start making your scene very slow, very laggy. So I'm going to set this up now. I'm going to get it kind of looking the way that I want it to look. And then we'll dial it back down just for render purposes. So let's try 10,000. And we really want to look at this a bit further away. It's good to look at it up close, but our real scene is going to be rendered a bit further away. So we can try it a bit further away. And we're going for sort of a stylized look here. This is a very realistic sort of looking grass here. So we want to be a bit more stylized with it. So it's still looking very sparse. We may want to change the material a tad. I'm just noticing that it's a little bit dark, or we can just try changing the material that we have. So if we select our material here, it looks like we do have a color jitter attached to that, and I think that may be what our issue is. So I want to disconnect our color jitter from that ground material. This way we'll just have a much more predictable material. So I'm going to go ahead and break that connection, and then we're just going to choose very desaturated, darker green. That's a little too bright. And probably more of a yellowish green. Can have a bit of shininess to it. Let's make sure that we don't have any sort of subsurface things going on here. So let's go back in our mesh node here. And I think I'm going to bump this up from, let's go to 300,000. That's going to be a lot. So again, I warn you to be very careful and mindful about how much of this you're using. And then we're going to take down our, where there's a random node. So we're going to take down our scale Y a little bit to make it a little bit thinner. So yeah, it's just a very much a matter of getting those settings right. I'm thinking we'll probably need to change the material of the grass from the ground to make it slightly different. So let's go to the ground material. And I'm going to make this a little bit more on the brownish side again. Yellowish brownish for the ground. And we'll add a new material for the grass. Assign new favorite material, standard surface. I'm going to go ahead and call this grass matte. We want a sort of lighter green, desaturated, lighter green color. And should be fairly rough, not completely rough, but fairly rough. And we'll see if that looks a little bit better. So yeah, it's just a matter of tweaking it to getting it to look right. I feel like this does actually look quite a bit better. I do want to take the shininess down on the ground quite a bit. So we'll go ahead and let's see if we can select the ground material. I'm going to take the roughness on that almost completely up. And then maybe we can come in and increase our Y scale a little bit more. I feel like that's really what's going to be filling it out because it's making those blades of grass a bit wider. So yeah, I like that. I think that is looking nicer. Of course, I'm probably going to tweak these settings a bit more as I work. But overall, I think this is a nice fill grass material. Again, you'll see that it's, I'm definitely adding hundreds of thousands of polygons to my scene. So you want to be very mindful and careful with the way that you're using this this feature. And then as far as like where my pavers are, say I don't want the grass to be where my pavers are. What I'm going to do first is take down my points, my number of points here quite a bit. So let's take this back down from 30,000 to 10,000, or 300,000 to 10,000. That's a little low. So let's maybe go to 100,000. Just so this will make it a little bit easier to work with as we're sort of dealing with our scene. But what I want to do to remove it from these areas is I'm going to create some influences. So we're going to go to Mesh and we're going to create a influence. If I can find it, influence, there we go, add influence node. And then when you first do that, everything is going to disappear. So basically what happens is it creates this little influencer. We have this little locator here. And if I drag this out and I go to my influencer node here, and what I want to do is turn on enable scale and turn everything else off. And then as let's see, we'll increase the radius here. In the past, for me to get this to work correctly, I needed to actually physically scale it up. So there we go. Now it's a little bit bigger. So you see what's happening within that area there. And we can edit the influence radius. It's scaling all of that grass upwards, right, within that radius. What I want is the opposite of that. So where it says strength here, I'm going to see if I can put -1 or 0. Let's try. I'm just trying some different settings here. So I'm just going to tweak these settings until we'll start to look a bit like what I'm looking for here. I kind of want to say that I should be overriding the scale. So if we do a negative value of -1, it's just going to put those under the ground there. So I don't think I want that. It's definitely not what I want. There we go. I think I want my strength. So yeah, I'm basically just looking for something like this where it's going to get rid of those the grass in that area. So something along the lines of that. And then we can just create more of these. So I can just right click here and say create. And then just select my other little locator there. Now I've noticed that these need a bit of scale to get to work. So I'm just going to scale them all to 50. But once I do that, I should have about the same settings for each little locator there. And I'm just going to go through and keep creating them until I have the areas where I don't want there to be grass. I'll have enough locators there to where we don't see the grass. So once again, I can create another one here by going to my influence, right click, say create. And then I'm just going to move this one. Again, it seems like we generally need a bit of scale to make this to get this to work, or from my experience. So I'm just going to scale all of these up to 50 and then it should work pretty flawlessly. So we'll do a quick render here just so you can kind of see the result of this. Let me go back into my grass and bump that back up. So we're at 100,000 there. Let's go to 500,000. And do a little render. And there we have it. So we see that we have the grass. The grass is looking good, and then we can kind of control using those influences. We can kind of control where we want that grass to be or not. So again, grass can be very tricky. Kind of just weigh your options if you want to have the grass or not. I'm doing a very simple grass. It's certainly possible to do something a little bit more complex like this. I'm just trying to keep it simple here, and that's how we're going to create the grass.